guys, welcome to my home. This is actually the first vlog I'm doing from my house. This is like a spare room, which I've been trying to, we kind of use as an office, but we also have guests in. And this is where I'll be doing most of my vlogs from now on. So get used to the space, although it will probably keep changing. Now, I haven't done a vlog in a while, and I can explain. If you watched my last video, I kind of hinted that it's a lot of work recording, editing, which I have to do alone like almost all the time. So I'm just going to be doing these videos when I get a chance, or like today when there's something really important I want to talk about. And I'm warning you that this video might end up being longer, slightly longer than most of my other videos, because I really just want to talk from the heart. And at the end of the video, I want to explain what you need to do if you ever find yourself in this situation. So I'm urging you to stay and listen until the end. And in advance, I'm thanking you for spending these moments with me. About like 2 months ago, we were called by my help and told that our boy was unwell. So we rushed home. We get here. He actually had a really high fever. He was very lethargic, just like seated or like sleeping, and like no energy whatsoever. So of course, first I gave him a painkiller, and then we put him in the car. We're taking him to our family doctor, Dr. Abula. I don't know if he knows he's our family doctor, or I've just announced in this video, but we basically see him for everything. But on the way there, something very interesting happened. Usually we put Malcolm in his car seat, but this particular instance, I mean, he was really sick. He looked like he was sick, so I was holding him in the front seat. And then just, as we're driving down, we weren't so far from where we usually go. I noticed that he's just staring at me with these eyes, completely like, blank, and I'm trying to talk to him, trying to, make him laugh and play with him, and he was not responding at all. So I look over to my hubby and I'm like, you guy, what is going on? Like, what's wrong with Malcolm? And then just as I'm asking him that, something really weird happened. He starts to shake. He starts to really shake, and his eyes are like turning and everything. You know what you see in movies? Before it hit me that he was having a seizure, I had no idea what was going on. So I'm trying to move him around and talk to him, and of course he's not responding. And then like a lot of saliva was coming out of his mouth. So I'm basically at this point just shouting at Charles, like, take us to hospital, take us to hospital. And he starts driving like a maniac on the road. We almost got into an accident, but you can imagine in that moment, it was just like so scary. And I'm really just trying to summarize this for you, because if I was to tell you in detail, or if I had done this video immediately this had happened a few days after, I probably would not have been able to be as composed. So we get to hospital and we're taken to the emergency room. At this time, the seizure was done. It took like a minute or less, although of course when it was happening it felt like 10 minutes or more. The seizure was done, and immediately it was done, he just like closes his eyes and he's like lifeless there. And honestly, I thought the worst had happened. I was like raising him to try and listen to the heartbeat and be sure that he's okay. But at this time, we got to the hospital, taken to the ER. When we got to the emergency room, they basically did like lots of, general tests on him. And the nurses kept assuring us, oh, he's okay. But he wasn't like responding. He was like in deep sleep, And I was just scared. He's unconscious, like do something. And that was like one of the worst experiences I have had in my life. The day just went on for much longer. I hate the hospital we went to, but we had to go there because it was the closest one from where we were at when the seizure happened. We took about 6 or 7 hours before we actually saw a doctor. And when we did see the doctor, she was a nice doctor, but I can't remember her name. She gave us 2 options. She basically told us she could admit us and they observe him overnight, or we could go home and bring him back the next day and just like monitor him ourselves. So since we had already had enough of that hospital, we decided to take him home. But the moment we got into the car, call it instincts, we said, you know what, let's take him to our doctor just for a second opinion before we go home. By this time it was about 7 p.m. Quickly again, I'm summarizing for you. We get to our doctor, and the moment we step into his office and start telling him what had happened, what happens? Malcolm has another seizure, a stronger one, lasted more than a minute, and it's so hard to watch, you guys. It's so hard to watch because this is your child, and there's nothing you can do. In that moment, there's honestly nothing you can do. The only thing that gave me a bit of peace was the fact that the doctor was right there. And he basically told me not to, hold him, just to let him go through what he was going through. After that, he explained to us that, of course, Malcolm had had a convulsion and that we needed to go to hospital because he said that was a really strong one based on his age. My boy at the time was 1 year, 3 months. So we go to hospital, and I tell you guys, this was like the hardest week. Like, if you follow me on social media, you would notice I wasn't commenting, texting, I was just off completely because it was the hardest thing to go through. We get to hospital, and my boy's a bit chunky, so we spent a lot of time, different nurses trying to figure out how to get his vein. They poked him probably like 6 times just to try and get a vein. They get one, it disappears, or they don't get one because, it was really hard to find one. And just watching your son go through this, watching this, and then immediately after that, they have to do something called nebulization, where they basically put a mask on his face and they administer drugs directly to his lungs. And then he's fussing, he's in pain, and you're just there, and there's nothing you can do. After this, we were admitted. We were in hospital for 4 days, 3 nights. Worst period of my life, I swear. And the reason was because they wanted to test him for meningitis, so they had to do a lumbar puncture, basically taking fluid from his spine. A 1 year, 3-month-old baby. Not that I'm saying it would have been easier if the child was older, but it's just so hard to watch this big needle going through your son. And again, there's nothing you can do. So they were testing for meningitis and cerebral malaria. I was scared I would say that wrong. And they take the fluid, and then we have to wait. We wait for like a culture test or something to be done, which can't happen like immediately, although there are preliminary results. But then that night, something really horrible happened. While we were in hospital, there seemed to be some commotion from the room next to us, the ward next to us. And in the morning, we realized that a child, 1 year, 5 months old, about 1 year, 5 months old, had died that night from meningitis. And there you are, as a parent, you've been told that your kid is waiting for meningitis results. I tell you guys, honestly, I don't remember a time when I was so scared before. Maybe when my mom was still alive. It was just a horrible experience to go through. I remember texting my dad, and I was just like broken, and he had to like send me messages to just remind me everything was okay. So we had to go through this long process, just waiting for the results, knowing what had happened to another mother and to her child, and then you could hear her crying, and it messes up with your mind, Anyway, the results eventually come back. Everything is negative. We're happy, but we're wondering what's going on with our boy. But the doctor told us, it's okay, we can go home. So we go home, and we monitor him. He still finished his meningitis medication because he was already on it. But then 1 week after this entire ordeal, what happens? He has another seizure. And a whole week, your boy is okay. He's playing, and you just imagine everything is okay. And this now just made me wonder what the heck was going on with my son. And this is what I want to talk about, because I want to actually educate you on something called febrile seizures or febrile convulsions. I also want to give you a disclaimer, because something's been happening with my tongue and I just keep saying things the wrong way. So if I shema, that's what we call it. It's slang in Kenya for those who don't understand. It's basically when you mispronounce something. Please don't laugh or just understand in advance. Anyway, febrile convulsions are something that happen to very many children and not very many people know about it. When the second seizure happened, of course, we rushed home, took him to hospital, and at this time, our current doctor wasn't available, so we called him and he advised us to go see another doctor. And I have to mention this doctor's name, Dr. Said. Thank you so very much, because now I understand what's happening with my son. We know what to do. We've taken our help for first aid training with my husband, so we just know the basics on what to do when and if this happens again, because it has happened again. It's actually happened 3 times now. And so when we got to her office, we explained our history. The one thing I like that she did is she explained to us what was happening, but she also sent us, like, documentation and information that we could read and understand more about what was happening to our boy. And this could happen to, I think, is it 1 out of 4 or 3 children? And we are the chosen few, sadly. But I just want you to know, because you could be a young mother, you might have a child one day, nieces, nephews, like I said, neighbors, and it would be nice to understand what's happening to the child. Now, this thing is called a febrile convulsion. It's not epilepsy. Sawa sawa. The one thing you need to understand is that febrile convulsions are caused when your child has a fever that goes past 38 to 39 degrees. Your child risks going into a seizure, having a seizure. And the reason is because they're still young, because it happens to kids between the age of 6 months and 6 years, but they outgrow it. The difference is that epileptic seizures can be caused by other things aside from fever spikes. So febrile convulsions or seizures happen because of the fever. Now, what causes a fever? Anything. It could be, of course, you've taken your child for their vaccine, the immunizations cause fevers, or it could be because, of course, they picked up a viral infection from their older sister or brother, bacterial infections. Or, get this, if you or someone in your family has had seizures before, when or while you were younger, it means there's a higher chance of your child getting these. And apparently, after my boy went through his first convulsion, I found out from my dad that I used to get this a lot when I was younger. So I think I turned out okay, or I'm turning out okay. So that should just help you understand that your child will be okay and they'll eventually outgrow this. Now, I want to talk you through what to do when and if you ever realize that your child, for any reason, is having a seizure. If you ever realize that your child is having a seizure, or if you're not even sure how to determine whether a child is having a seizure, I'm here to help you. Number 1, the signs of the seizure will be, of course, that your child is not responding to you the way they are. Chances are they'll have a really high fever, and the way to check is with a thermometer gun, which I will quickly go and grab and then show you.
These are the 2 we have. This is the old school one, which I mainly use when the kids are asleep because it's hard to have them in one spot. And then there's the instant one, which works 2 ways, for the forehead and for the ear.
So number 1, your child will be unresponsive. Basically, you're talking to them, they're not the way they are usually, and you can easily tell this as a mother or someone who's been hanging around this child. 2, chances are their fever will be really high. 3, another sign you can tell is maybe they vomit or they're not eating and they just really want to lie around most of the time. So these are the common fast signs. Now the seizure happens when your child starts shaking or twitching. It could be just in some parts of the body, like the legs and the hands, or it could be the entire body. And you might notice like the eyes and everything. They just, I mean, when it's happening, you'll know it's happening. Number one, let them go through that seizure. As tempting as it is, don't hold them, don't try and restrict them from moving. You have to allow them to go through it. You have to lie them down in what is called like the recovery position if you've done fasting. But basically you lie them down on the side and you just like kind of place their hand and their leg, their right hand and their leg, right hand, right leg to the side. I'll try and find an image for you and put it up somewhere here, somewhere. But then just let them lie down on the ground. Number two, make sure that there's nothing around them, because as the seizure is happening, you don't want them to hurt themselves. Three, try and estimate how long it's taken. There are two types of seizures. The simple one takes about 1 or 2 minutes or less. But there's also a complex one, which is very, very rare. And it could even take up to 15 minutes, but it's very rare. So you need to be able to tell the doctor afterwards exactly how long the seizure took. So try and estimate the time. If your child had anything in their mouth, or if they were holding anything, if they had anything around them, just try and make sure that you get anything out of anything that could harm them, basically. So you get them out of harm's way. Remove whatever is in their mouth, because they could end up biting themselves. So that's what you need to do when the seizure is happening. And of course, immediately after, take them to hospital. I would also suggest, if you feel that they have a fever, although most of the time after the seizure the fever goes down, you could offer them a painkiller. But if you're close to hospital, just take them to the doctor and take them to the emergency room so that you can be seen faster, okay? Don't just wait on the line. Explain to the nurses or whoever is attending to you that the child has just had a seizure. This is the other very, very important part of this story. How can you prevent seizures? You kind of can't, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. What you can do is pay close attention to your child, watch out for the signs. If you feel that they have a fever, I always keep painkillers in the house. There are different kinds. There's Calpol, Brufen, Panadol has a painkiller for kids. So basically find a painkiller and administer according to your child's age and weight. And then immediately after, take them to hospital, whatever you notice, because what you need to do is make sure that their temperature stays, below 37 degrees. I think that's what I've tried to do. The other way to make sure that their temperature stays below that is, of course, to expose them. So just leave them in like a diaper if you must. And something else you could do is dab a wet cloth on them. Also, something that I learned from Phoebe is a really good way to make sure that your child's temperature reduces is just hold them close to you on your chest, like an open chest. For example, dads, this is where you can come in really handy. You can just take your child as they are exposed, no clothes, nothing on your chest as well, and you guys could just lie there together. And of course, the heat from the child will be transferred to you. As a mom, you could do the same. Just wear like your bra or something and hold your child, and that really helps to quickly reduce your child's fever. The last thing I want to tell you is that you're doing an awesome job. This is not your fault. Your child will be okay. They will outgrow it. So don't be worried. Just don't get tired of taking your kid to hospital. The other thing we've started doing, thank you Mama Ari, is giving our kids vitamins just to boost their immunity, which I think has really helped, because we haven't seen a seizure, and I believe we won't in a while. So there you are. Now you know about febrile convulsions and febrile seizures, and I'm proud of myself. I didn't say that wrong. And thank you for watching these moments with me. And if you know someone who has a kid, it would be worth watching this video just to help them understand that this happens to kids and to know what to do. But see you